Hello my delicious co-creators, Lilou here from Arizona on the Juicy Living Tour, an amazing 12 months tour around the world, interviewing, inspiring people like Dennis that I have here next to me. Hello.
Hello.
I really enjoy, I was quite amazed by your work because I've never heard of Vedic Astrology before. So this is a first and I'm very excited to talk about it and how it is different from regular Western astrology. And also we're going to go really into details here within my own chart, and we're going to see really the difference and see how we can help us to live our life purpose using all this information that is available to us, because there is a lot of information. Thank you for this moment.
Oh, you're welcome. And you know, I would just say that the main thing that I would stress about Vedic astrology is the astrology of India. So it's based on what's called the sidereal zodiac, which is more of an astronomer's point of view. Western astrology keeps us in touch with the seasons and the solstice points, which is very important. And in some ways, I think Western astrology has a certain psychological sophistication that I really love. And I love all forms of astrology. But the Vedic system, to me, kind of undercuts into the soul level a little bit more for me. It's based on the ancient Vedas and the ancient texts of India. And so it's a 2,000 to 3,000 year old system conservatively. And as I like to say, it's hard to argue with a 2,000, 3,000 year old database, you know, when you've been collecting. And the main thing with the Vedic system based on the sidereal zodiac, for those of you that know astrology, is that it's about a 23 to 24 degree difference between Western astrology and the Vedic or Hindu astrology. What you do is you subtract those degrees from your Western chart. So for example, in your chart, you're born August 20th, 1977, and we use the time 3:05 p.m., Santa Barbara, California. So it's the same as Western astrology. Those are the three main factors. But when we look at your chart, we see that you have sun sign in Leo in both Western and Vedic astrology.
So some people won't sometimes have the same sign.
Some people will shift. And some people, like you, stay in the sign. When you stay in the sign, you embody the lion fully. And you have the lion mane, the lioness mane. And so you're a true Leo is what I call it, you know. And not only that, but in Vedic astrology, we use what are called whole sign houses. And I won't get into the details of that, except you can think of each house as a complete, each sign is a complete house. So this Leo sun falls into the 10th house, which is your house of career. So it very much empowers you in terms of being on stage and enjoying being on stage. And you also have the planet Mercury there, which is the planet of communication. Mercury goes into Leo as well. And Leo loves to be on stage, so you really enjoy your work. But the one paradox we were talking about last night, which is a little different, is that in Vedic astrology, your moon is in the 12th house. And that indicates the need for alone time for you. And so when moon is in the 12th, wherever the moon is, that indicates that the person needs a certain, how would we say, emotional or desire connection with that particular house.
It's so true. It is so true. And that the regular astrology, the Western astrology, wouldn't show that.
Your moon falls on the cusp of the 11th, 12th house, which is groups, organization, networking. But it would still show that. But it's interesting in the Vedic system is that your moon sign is Libra rather than Scorpio. And so the Libra is all about balance, fairness, integrity, wanting to be associated with people of integrity, truth.
Yeah.
So it brings in high values. And as we were talking about last night, your moon is in a particular section of the Hindu zodiac called Swati. These are what are called the Nakshatras, and there's 27 of them. If you can imagine dividing the zodiac into 27 segments rather than just the 12 signs. It's like a further, deeper level of the zodiac. And so, again, we would say that your moon is in a particular section called Swati, which means the priest or the high priestess. And as I said last night, the image is a single blade of grass blowing in the wind, which indicates your sense of independence, autonomy, self-trust, development of intuition. So those of you that have studied the Tarot, it would be similar to the High Priestess card. She's sitting on the throne. Sometimes, at least in the Crowley deck, she's holding a net, which indicates not wanting to be netted in a relationship. So it
a certain
indicates
influence too then.
it's a strong influence for you in terms of how always having your mate be the guardian of your seclusion. And some people wouldn't see that in you because you're very social and very gregarious and outgoing. But yet this moon gives that. As in Western astrology, I use the outer planets. Traditional Vedic astrologers generally don't use the outer planets. So you have the planet Uranus conjunct the moon. As I was mentioning to Zephi last night, our friend from Greece, is that that's connected with the Prometheus myth. Mm-hmm. And Rick Tarnas in his writings talks about this, and I think you had said you had interviewed him.
Yes, yes.
Prometheus is the god, you know, the Greek god that brought fire to earth. So this indicates that that's a strong desire for you emotionally, very strong. Mm-hmm. And just from what you were telling me about your work, it seems that that Promethean myth is very strong for you. 1,500
videos later, yeah.
And so,
I confirm.
And furthermore, this is where it's a little different. In your Vedic chart, instead of being Sagittarius rising, which is totally true on one level, personality, because you're a globetrotter, Sag likes to travel. But in your rising sign in Vedic astrology is Scorpio. So it really likes to go deep into things and explore the steamy goals of the soul. It doesn't want to stay on the surface. And those of you that have studied astrology, we always think of Scorpio as it connected with the scorpion. But the higher octave of Scorpio is the eagle. So it's that ability, like in Hindu mythology of Garuda, of flying above everything and being able to see the big picture. And probably all your frequent flyer miles, I don't know. But this Scorpio rising, I would connect you with the eagle energy of this, very strong. And then you have Neptune on the ascendant in both systems, which indicates that sensitivity, the psychic intuitive ability. It's very strong for you. And also very empathic. You very much feel everything that's around you.
Yeah.
The one challenge in this chart...
That's impressive.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, that's very impressive, everything that you're saying.
The one strong thing in your chart is the desire for a relationship. A real strong desire, because Scorpio is ruled traditionally by Mars. Mars is in your 7th house of marriage. However, when Mars is in the 7th house, it creates a situation called Kuja Dosha, which means Mars affliction. It can indicate sometimes, even in the best of situations, it can indicate early marriage and divorce. And I think you said you haven't been married. So I think you've dodged the proverbial bullet, you know, because it shows that maybe we would say some challenges with that. And yet it shows you really being drawn to a mystical mate, artistic mate, creative mate, because Venus rules your 7th house of marriage. But it's in the 8th house. So when it's in the 8th house, again, it indicates sometimes delays around marriage. And the importance for you of that you have to have a spiritual mate. It's almost like spiritual affinity has to be first, then intellectual affinity, then romantic or sexual affinity. If you put the other way first, then it creates problems sometimes. So relationships out of passion, they can sometimes be, as one of my teachers, Yogananda, would say, poison honey. You know, sometimes something tasting sweet, you know, but yet like eating candy. You know, after a while, it can be a problem.
Yes.
So these are some of the things that I see. And I mentioned to you last night, too, you have to be very careful about your spiritual teachers. You have to be very careful about the spiritual teachers, because it shows that Saturn in the 9th house, there can be some difficulty with gurus, teachers, where you have to be very selective about who you allow in the inner circle.
That's where the intuition really comes in handy.
Yeah. And maybe it could indicate some disappointment early in life, you know, some challenges. Saturn on a positive level too indicates questioning authority. Really questioning authority. Even my authority, whoever's the authority. It's like you're a person that walks the mystical path with practical feet. You're very grounded as you explore these things. And you want to bring science and mysticism together. So some of you are, I don't know, it sounds like you've had so many people, but again, like people that are very open-minded, but also wanting to bring things into a grounded level.
Yeah, that is very important, I feel. And that's why I love astrology, because it can become really practical too. Even what you do with cartography and all of that. But tell us, before we get more into that, how did you come about I mean, what's your story? How did you discover Vedic astrology?
It was in 1980. I was doing like a 3-month yoga teacher's training retreat up in Nevada City, California, at a place called Ananda. It's a retreat center. And I was told by Swami Kriyananda, who's the head of that center, that you should go and have your Hindu astrology chart done. So this was, what, almost 31 years ago. So he told me about a man named Chakrapani Ulal, who's in Los Angeles, a Vedic astrologer who was Swami Muktananda's astrologer. And Chakrapani was the one that really, the main person that brought Vedic astrology, one of the main people that brought Vedic astrology from India to the United States. So I went to see Chakrapani. This was again August of 1980. And he said to me within 10 minutes of the session, "I know your mind very well, perhaps better than you." And he told me, "You'll be married twice." And I hadn't even been engaged once. So this is a little disconcerting. And sure enough, that happened. The first marriage was like up in smoke after a couple of years. Second marriage has gone much better, you know, much stronger. So he made all these different predictions. He said, you'll be a teacher, counselor, consultant, advisor. And he said also an astrologer is very good for you. So this was actually before I had started. So I was introduced to Vedic astrology back in 1980, but it wasn't until some books started coming out in the mid-80s where it was more accessible. So I studied Western astrology first, and then became more interested in Hindu or Vedic astrology as we moved through the mid-80s to late 80s.
But that has to have influenced the decisions then you took later. Because it's quite a fine limit there between knowing too much, and then that has an influence over the next, you know, the subsequent events in our life, and just not knowing. And I mean, what's that fine line? How do you?
Every astrologer and all of us on this planet really wrestle, particularly astrologers, with fate and free will question. And my feeling about astrology is that it should be used to reveal choices rather than make choices. It helps us to take discriminative action in our life. But to me, in some level, there is no such thing as fate in that sense, because we can change it through our own will and the grace of God. There are patterns of destiny, which the chart reveals, but I don't think of it so fully written in stone unless I see it 3 or 4 times showing up in the chart. Like your chart, for example, there is this issue about waiting on marriage, being patient, for example. There is a chart, there is an aspect I think we mentioned last night about also waiting for children as well. You know, being patient. So those areas are kind of, we would say, a flashing yellow light in those areas. Whereas career is just full on, you know. So I would say you're a person that would die in the cupboards and the dishes. You know, if you try to be even a domestic goddess, you know, it's not going to work for you. And your greatest thing is your friends. You know, the friends really help you a lot. So
community, you mentioned a lot.
Yeah, sangha.
Which really feels right, because this is what we're all healing and going through this journey together. As I'm interviewing people like you, I feel we're all part of this journey.
So I think we have to be careful with, you know, as you say, you know, becoming too wedded to our chart. Because sometimes you can use your chart as an excuse of why you're not, you know, creating, because Saturn is doing this aspect in your chart. Where Saturn really is the greatest of the planets in terms of spiritual growth, because it teaches us humility, teaches us compassion, it teaches us patience, it teaches us to be in the moment, to be fully in the moment. The discipline, structure, grounding that helps to free us. So we can take anything in the chart and we can make lemonade out of the lemons. You know? But maybe from an ego plane level, it's still difficult. You know, it's not easy, for example, going through a divorce for most people. So we see this in the chart where, again, you, as my teacher Yogananda would say, you've outwitted the stars by waiting, for example, in the marriage and focusing on your career. So a lot of people's charts are not this way. Every chart is different based on, again, the date of birth, the exact time from the birth certificate if possible, and the location. Just in Western astrology, But for me, I use the analogies that Western astrology is like the waves on the ocean, and Vedic is like the undercurrents or the riptides or sometimes the tsunamis that come. And by knowing that in advance, you can see a pothole in the road and you can slow down and hit that pothole maybe at 10 miles an hour rather than 60. As Carl Jung said, that which we do not face in the unconscious, we can live somewhat as fate. Because we're unaware, we're unconscious, so we don't see the pothole.
Well, what's impressive too is that you can see within 5 years, or you can see quite long term.
One of the Vedic, it's a good point, one of the specialties of the Vedic astrology system are what are called the dashas, or the planetary cycles of one's life. These are times when a particular planet has a certain say for a number of years. For example, since the age of 16, you have been in what's called a Saturn cycle, which again is a very spiritual cycle, but it's growing steady, slowly. It's a sure-footed goat climbing the mountain step by step, you know, building. I mean, it's nothing comes, you know, just easy, you know, you have to work. And yet you're very much at the very end of this Saturn cycle. In October 2010, you went into the last phase, which is Jupiter. So we could say it's like the light at the end of the tunnel, but it's not a train. And you're moving through this Jupiter, which is really strong in your chart for occult studies, metaphysics, mysticism, psychology, astrology, any kind of symbolic hidden knowledge system. Because you have both Jupiter and Venus in the 8th house. 8th house is connected with all those areas. Jupiter and Venus are both what we call natural benefic planets, very strong. So this is not a chart where you would be so much interested in traditional religion. It could indicate more the path of the mystic, you know, more of an individualized path rather than traditional path. And this is excellent for your intuition, psychic ability. And those two planets are in the sign of Gemini in your Vedic system. Gemini is the twin, so it can indicate having dual careers. You may have one thing going and then another too, you know, where they're very strong for you. Because I see in your chart writing also, in addition to, you know, we could say public relations, networking, communication, all these things. This is a chart of more of writing as you get older, because you're going into, in 2013, a 17-year cycle of Mercury. Mercury is well placed in both Western and Vedic astrology. It's a very strong planet. Mercury is the planet of writing, communication, teaching, counseling, consulting, advising. So all these things are very strong in this chart. And usually the Sun and Mercury in Leo in the 10th house, again, brings this strong connection with profits and gains through side ventures. Like if you worked a regular job, it would be the death of you.
Yeah, it is, yeah. I've tried that and it just doesn't
really
quite work.
You're a person that really...
I lost my job and I liked it. It was my first book.
Yeah, and it's, you can do it, but you know, at the end of the day, because the Sun is so strong in Leo in the 10th, you are a leader, and so... Yeah.
So what I love, what really blew my mind additionally to that is that whole cartography, astrocartography you call it, which really shows the lines, the ley lines that are aligned, I mean specific places where I should be to really reveal, you know, to accelerate growth or to feel that expansion and to amplify, you know, our great, so I'm blown away. How can you know that?
It's based on...
And tell me where I should go on the tour.
It's based on actually a sidereal astrologer named Firebrace. Way back in the 50s, he developed this astrocartography. Jim Lewis made it very popular in the 80s, and then I was trained by Jim back in the early 90s and became certified in this astrocartography. What's really neat about this system is that you'll get the same maps if you're using Western astrology or Vedic astrology. It shows these, how would we say, like these power zones for you. Like, for example, you have a very strong Mars line running through Sedona, Arizona. So it brings you here. It indicates you can meet powerful people, intense people. However, sometimes this Mars line can bring some challenges in relationship too. You know, it's kind of a truly.
How interesting is that?
Because Mars
I just had some challenges in my relationship.
And so it's kind of like we would say like a, how would we say? Yeah, exactly. You know, it's both. It's like the sugar and then the whip also. So very strong. But it's a very powerful line for you. Meeting dynamic people. It just sometimes it makes it a little harder for personal relationships here in Sedona. So it's a place that's great for you to visit. Not necessarily a place that you would live, you know.
Interesting.
So and your strong influence you have too, which is off the coast, the west coast of California, is a Mercury line. Mercury midheaven would affect the whole west coast, but stronger in Northern California, Oregon, Washington, Vancouver. So this Mercury line these lines are always there. Mercury line's always affecting the west coast, particularly the northern west coast. This Mars line is always going through Sedona. These lines will always have an effect. Correct. They're called natal lines.
How do we calculate that?
It's again based on your birth information. Exactly. This is why I generally will not run these charts unless you have a really accurate birth time within 5 or 10 minutes. Because at 10 minutes it will throw this chart a bit.
Wow. Yeah, very, very interesting.
Now, one of the things, and I was looking at this because I know you're going to Hawaii in a little while.
Yeah, from June 14 to July 28. And
it was very interesting on your Hawaii map is that you have a Saturn midheaven line, which is the best of the Saturn lines, going right through Maui. Now, it will affect, and this is natal, so it's always there. And the Hawaiian Islands are very small. So even to have a line even running through there, sometimes you'll see some people's charts, they have no lines going through there because it's such a small segment of the globe. But your Saturn line goes right through Maui. It would also affect all the Hawaiian Islands, but also affect the Big Island very strongly, Kona side, but it would affect, Hilo as well. So Saturn midheaven's the career. So it brings you maybe some structure grounding around the career. Also maybe some financial support, some strength in terms of your grounding structure there. Maybe an older man, doesn't have to be a man, but it could be an older person that is very supportive of your work, because Saturn is connected generally with older people. So it can be strong in that sense.
And that person can come from there, or it's while I'm there that this connection builds up. And
a very good point, because what happens with the astrocartography is you can have a great line somewhere, and not necessarily that you have to live there. It can indicate people from there coming into your life, exactly what you're saying. But since you're going there, it's very powerful.
Yes.
But it indicates work. I mean, it's, again, Saturn is work,
Oh, yes, bring it on.
Yeah. So, but like I said, of the Saturn lines, it's the best.
Yeah. Excellent.
Yeah, so it's going right.
It's interesting that I'm flying to Maui out of all islands, and this is the second time I'm going specifically to that island. I went there in 2004, and it was also a pivotal moment.
Yeah, so it can be very strong. And again, this is a natal line, so it's always influencing there throughout your life. You had too, because I think you had said you were going to Canada.
Yes, East Coast.
East Coast also.
In August.
I could show you this.
Canadians were coming! I can't wait.
The natal line you have, it's very strong. It goes close to Montreal. It would affect Toronto as well. It's like, if you could think of this vector between Montreal and Toronto as being very powerful for you. Moon on the midheaven there indicates the moon is the public, so you're very well liked there.
Yes.
It can indicate a great place for you to have one home base. Venus on the descendant close to Montreal, which again would still affect Toronto, indicates, sometimes it can indicate a romantic relationship coming. Or just people love you. Venus is love.
Yeah, there's great love there. We had great exchange, because the cool thing is that I can do the videos in French and in English, and there's so much. Yeah, there's been a lot, very successful videos, very successful, really, powerful people with great knowledge, and it's done in a friendly way, and I really connect well with
your
French-speaking Canadians.
This won't show up on the screen, but you can see how it forms a V.
Clearly.
Which could be like victory. And you even have a line that goes up through through north of this area, it's a Jupiter descending line. So this whole area is kind of sandwiched in these positive lines. So that area is very strong for you throughout your life. So
and interesting enough, when I started the tour, an astrologer friend of mine said that the Juicy Living tour would expand from another country that it was mainly shooted from. So it could totally be Canada. Something will happen there that will totally propulse the tour. And
again, it can indicate favorable, even when you're not there, people helping you from there.
Yes.
People really supporting you from there. People helping to promote you from there.
Yeah, yeah.
So it's very strong. I wanted to mention too that you have just, this is over the future, is that you have a sun midheaven line going through the west coast, and it's actually going exactly through the area you were born, Santa Barbara. So very strongly, even though you may not be doing something there this year, can indicate, again, strong support from people, say, in Malibu, Santa Barbara, a little bit north of LA. This line moves 55 miles a year, always in an easterly fashion. So it'll come through LA and San Diego over the next year or two. So it can bring some support there. Doesn't mean you have to live there. It can just indicate your midheaven, the career taking off there. So you may find yourself on television there. I think you said Oprah has moved there from Chicago, or has some.
Oprah has, yeah, she has.
Things like that. Maybe doors open for you.
Network is there.
Maybe doors open for you that are not quite there yet, but they happen strongly, over these next 2 years because of this sun midheaven. Midheaven's always connected with the career, is moving through there. These are what we call progressed lines or transiting lines. They're like what astrological weather fronts are moving through areas. For example, you've had the Saturn midheaven line, which is again the best of the midheaven lines, the one you have going through Maui. You've had that moving through Sedona over this last 6 months or so. It'll be moving towards Santa Fe, Taos. So it can bring some connections there, or again, some people from there that support your work. So these things, these are very sensitive to time. And, I find it, very interesting. I always tell people, though, if they have a great line somewhere, common sense is allowed. You could have a great line in Iraq, but you necessarily wouldn't want to live there.
Yes.
So it works that way.
Yeah, and those lines indicate... how does it work? The energy of the place? Planet.
Yeah, it's like if you could think of it like a sun line is very much like where the sun shines. It's where it's brilliant, bright, And so sun midheaven would indicate your career really taking off there.
Woohoo!
So
next on OWN, Juicy Living Tour coming right to you.
So you find, again, that these influences natally are always there, and then this what's called cyclic cartography brings these influences in. So
thank you.
I hope this has been of help.
Yeah, if there's something, is there something we haven't mentioned?
Well, I did. This? Yeah, because I know you have the French
roots.
To
clarify or
yeah, and I looked at this. No, this is a little ways away from now, 11 months from now, but May 1st of 2012. That month can be an excellent time to be in France, and to also be in UK, particularly England. You have a Jupiter line that's transiting through there, and it will be there kind of over the month. And it will hit Paris probably mid-May and go on into Italy and Germany.
Well, that's an excellent time then to do the Juicy Living Tour in Europe.
So that's why I brought that up, was that you don't have to wait until then, but you may want to
it's a great time to
be
start.
There, in terms of the May 1st, it goes right through the Bordeaux region, and then it will continue to move.
I think that's a fantastic time to start the second season of the tour.
Sure.
Yeah.
So these lines, you can use it in that way, a little bit of planning. You know.
Yes. It's like another tool to help you make decision without being the only tool.
Correct.
Intuition is a strong one too, and what feels right in our heart.
Yeah, that's the most important thing. I think what feels right in your heart. And astrology, again, I look at it like a weather report. maybe at best, you know. Of course, it's gotten a little better,
Yeah.
maybe 80% accurate, but don't, you know, don't bet the farm on it. You know, I always say it helps us, again, to take discriminative action, but the heart really is the most important thing. And if you resonate in the heart, as there's a quote, I think it's from the Vedas, that all times are auspicious for those that have the protection of Shiva. It could be Jesus, it could be Buddha,
Yeah.
but all times are auspicious.
Mm-hmm.
But I think this is coming out at an interesting time, and I'll say this and then I'll stop, is there is a solar eclipse on June the 1st of this year, 2011, and there's a lunar eclipse on June the 15th, and a solar eclipse on July 1st. This is unusual for these eclipses to happen almost within 1 month and to be back to back. Usually there'll be a solar and lunar, or lunar and solar, but to have 3 is a very powerful time for personal transformation. You may see the world going through even more undulations, although I don't like to predict negative things. But let's just say we have to even more fasten our astral seatbelts during this time. And in India, under a solar eclipse, they would say that is a good time to meditate, good time to go inward.
Not really make decisions then.
I would say, yeah, to really, when in doubt, wait it out. Exactly. Yep. So you're right.
Awesome. Thank you, Dennis. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Much love, my beautiful co-creators from Sedona.